When a stranger's hand becomes your only shield, you learn fast. Protection has a price, and power wears a face you can't forget. Elena Carter thought one dance would save her from a nightmare. She didn't know the man who took her hand owned half the city's shadows, or that by dawn she'd belong to a world where mercy is currency and violence speaks softer than promises. Giovanni Rossi doesn't do favors. He makes investments. And tonight, in a club drenched in rain and secrets, he just claimed his most dangerous one yet. Follow this story to the end. Hit like. And comment your city so I can see how far this tale travels. The rain came down like a punishment. Chicago didn't just get wet, it drowned. The kind of storm that turned streets into rivers and made the wealthy pull their collars higher, as if expensive fabric could shield them from the cold truth that money couldn't control the weather. Thunder rolled across the skyline, rattling windows in their frames, shaking the bones of buildings that had stood for 100 years. Inside the meridian, none of that mattered. The club sat in the heart of the city like a secret kept in plain sight. No sign outside. No velvet ropes or bouncers checking lists. You either knew about it or you didn't. And if you didn't, you weren't supposed to. The entrance was a single black door on a street corner that looked abandoned after dark, the kind of place people walked past without a second glance. But behind that door, down a hallway lined with dark wood and low amber lighting, the world opened into something else entirely. The main room was all dark mahogany and brass fixtures, chandeliers dripping crystal like frozen tears, tables arranged in intimate clusters around a central dance floor that gleamed under soft golden light. A jazz quartet played in the corner, live, always live, the kind of music that made you feel things you didn't want to name. The air smelled like expensive cigars, aged whiskey, and the particular brand of confidence that came from knowing you were untouchable. This wasn't a place for tourists. This was where power came to unwind. Giovanni Rossi sat in a corner booth, his back to the wall, his eyes on everything. He always sat with his back to the wall. Old habit, useful habit, the kind that kept you breathing when other men with his kind of influence ended up in the ground before 40. He was 36, but he'd lived more years than that. You could see it in his eyes, dark, steady, the kind of gaze that took in every detail without seeming to move. He had the face of old Italian cinema, sharp jaw, strong nose, dark hair swept back with the kind of casual precision that suggested he didn't try too hard but didn't need to. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, the kind of fit that whispered wealth without shouting it. Across from him sat Marcus Delacroix, a city councilman with ambitions bigger than his integrity. Marcus was nervous. Giovanni could always tell when men were nervous. They touched their faces too much, adjusted their ties, checked their phones like the screen might save them. "The zoning vote happens Thursday," Marcus said, his voice low despite the music. "I can guarantee 4 votes, maybe 5. "Maybe isn't a number I work with," Giovanni replied. His voice was quiet, smooth, the kind of tone that made you lean in to hear it. He lifted his glass, whiskey, neat, always neat, and took a slow sip. "I need 6. 6 is what we agreed on." Giovanni set the glass down without a sound. "I don't renegotiate terms, Marcus. I set them. You accept them. That's how this works." Marcus swallowed. "Victor Castellano's been making moves, offering incentives. Victor offers money. I offer certainty." Giovanni's eyes didn't blink. "When people take my deals, they sleep well. When they take Victor's, they wonder when the bill comes due. You're a smart man, Marcus. You know which one keeps you breathing." The councilman's hand trembled slightly as he reached for his own drink. "I'll get you 6. "Thursday," Giovanni confirmed. He pulled an envelope from his jacket and slid it across the table. "First half. The rest when the votes are counted." Marcus took the envelope, tucked it inside his coat, and stood. He tried to smile. It didn't reach his eyes. "Pleasure doing business." "Always is." Giovanni watched him leave, weaving between tables toward the exit. Another piece moved. Another deal locked. Another step toward the thing he'd been building for 5 years: control. Not the loud, bloody kind that made headlines, the quiet kind. The kind that ran so deep you didn't see it until it was too late to fight it. He signaled the waiter, a young man named Thomas, who'd worked here long enough to know when to speak and when to vanish. "Another, Mr. Rossi?" "Please." Thomas disappeared. Giovanni leaned back, letting the music wash over him. The quartet had shifted into something slower, something that ached. A woman's voice joined them, soft, smoky, singing about love like it was a wound that wouldn't close. That's when he saw her. She stood near the entrance, just inside the main room, scanning the space with the kind of controlled panic that made Giovanni's instincts sharpen. She was small, maybe 5'4" in the heels she wore, with dark blonde hair pulled into a simple twist at the nape of her neck. Her dress was deep emerald green, elegant but not flashy, the kind of thing a woman wore when she wanted to blend in but couldn't help standing out. But it wasn't the dress that caught his attention. It was her hands. They were shaking. She was trying to hide it, clutching a small black purse like it was a lifeline. But Giovanni had spent his life reading people the way others read newspapers. He saw fear, real fear, the kind that came from experience, not imagination. Her eyes swept the room again, and this time they locked on something, or someone, across the space. Giovanni followed her gaze. A man sat at the bar, mid-30s, athletic build, expensive watch, the kind of smile that probably charmed people at parties. He was staring directly at her, not casual, not friendly, possessive, the kind of stare that said, "You belong to me, and you know it." The woman's jaw tightened. Her knuckles went white around her purse. Giovanni watched as she made a decision. She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and started walking. Not toward the man at the bar, but toward the center of the room, toward the dance floor, toward Giovanni. She moved with purpose now, her fear buried beneath something that looked like determination. People stepped aside without realizing it, parting for her the way water parts around a stone. And then she was standing in front of his table, looking down at him with eyes the color of smoke, gray, uncertain, haunted. "I need a favor," she said. Her voice was quiet but steady, the kind of voice that had practiced staying calm when everything inside was screaming. Giovanni tilted his head slightly. "I don't know you." "I know." She glanced over her shoulder, quick, checking the bar. The man was still watching. "But I need you to dance with me, just one song, please." Most men in Giovanni's position would have said no, would have dismissed her, sent her away, gotten back to their whiskey and their plans. But Giovanni wasn't most men. He'd built an empire on reading situations faster than anyone else in the room, on seeing opportunities where others saw inconvenience. And he saw something in her eyes that he recognized, something he'd seen in mirrors years ago, before he became the man people feared. Desperation wearing a mask of control. He stood, slowly, deliberately. He was taller than she'd probably expected, 6'2", broad-shouldered, the kind of frame that took up space without trying. "One song," he agreed. The relief that flashed across her face was so raw it almost hurt to see. "Thank you." He offered his hand. She took it. Her fingers were cold. Giovanni led her onto the dance floor, acutely aware of every eye that tracked their movement. He was known here, recognized. People didn't approach Giovanni Rosi unless they were invited. This woman had just broken protocol, and the room noticed. The quartet shifted into something slow and aching, a melody that wrapped around them like smoke. Giovanni placed his hand on her waist, firm but respectful, and drew her close enough to lead, far enough to breathe. They began to move. She was a good dancer, better than good. She followed his lead instinctively, her body responding to the subtle pressure of his hand, the shift of his weight. For a moment, she almost relaxed. "What's your name?" Giovanni asked, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "Elena." "Elena." He said it like he was testing the weight of it. "And the man at the bar?" Her body tensed immediately. "You noticed." "I notice everything." He guided her through a turn, smooth, easy. "Who is he?" "Someone I used to know." Her voice was tight now, careful. "Someone I'm trying to stop knowing." He doesn't seem to agree with that plan. Elena's eyes flicked toward the bar again. Giovanni could feel the fear creeping back into her, tightening her shoulders, shortening her breath. He doesn't take no for an answer. Giovanni's jaw tightened. He'd seen this before. Too many times. Men who thought possession was love, who confused control with connection. Men who hurt women and called it passion. He hated those men. "How long?" Giovanni asked. What? How long has he been following you? Elena's breath caught. She stared up at him, her gray eyes wide. How did you? You're afraid, but you're not surprised to see him. That means this isn't the first time. Giovanni's voice was calm, factual. You came here looking for cover. That means you knew he'd follow. So I'll ask again. How long? She swallowed hard. 3 weeks since I left him. And before you left? Elena's gaze dropped. 2 years. 2 years. Giovanni felt something cold settle in his chest. Did he hurt you? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The song was ending. The final notes hung in the air like a question. Giovanni made a decision, the kind he was good at making, fast and certain. Stay close to me, he said quietly. What? When the song ends, stay close. Don't look at him. Don't acknowledge him. Just stay with me. Elena's eyes searched his face, looking for the trick, the angle, the cost. Why would you? Because I don't like men who hurt women, Giovanni said simply. And because right now you need someone he won't touch. That's me. The music stopped. The room settled into that brief, expectant silence that always followed a song's end. Giovanni kept his hand on Elena's waist, kept her anchored to him as he turned them both toward his table. Come on. He led her back to his booth, acutely aware of the man at the bar shifting in his seat, his posture going rigid with barely controlled anger. Giovanni ignored him completely. He guided Elena into the booth, then slid in beside her. Not across, beside, positioning himself between her and the rest of the room. Thomas appeared instantly. Mr. Rosie? 2 waters, and whatever the lady wants to drink. Elena's voice was small. Just water is fine. Thomas nodded and vanished. Giovanni turned to Elena, his expression neutral, calm. Tell me his name. Why? Because I need to know what I'm dealing with. Elena hesitated, then whispered, Brandon Mitchell. Giovanni knew the name, not personally, but contextually. Brandon Mitchell worked in finance, mid-level executive at one of the big firms downtown, connected enough to have access, not connected enough to have real power, the kind of man who threw his weight around in small spaces because he knew he'd get crushed in bigger ones. He ever hit you in public? Giovanni asked. Elena flinched at the bluntness of the question. Once, at a restaurant, but it was subtle, a grab, a squeeze. Things people wouldn't see unless they were looking. But he hit you in private. She nodded, her throat working. Yes. Thomas returned with the water. Giovanni waited until he left before continuing. You filed a report? I tried. He has friends in the department. Nothing stuck. Of course he did. Men like Brandon always had friends. Friends who looked the other way, who made excuses, who protected predators because it was easier than accountability. Giovanni's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. A message from Luca, his second-in-command. All clear, shipment secure. He typed back a quick response, then returned his attention to Elena. Where are you staying? What? Tonight. Where are you staying? Elena's guard went up immediately. I have an apartment. Does he know where it is? She didn't answer. That was answer enough. Giovanni pulled out his phone again, typed a quick message. You're not going back there tonight. You can't just... I can. He looked at her directly, his dark eyes steady. You came to me for help. I'm giving it. But we do this my way, or we don't do it at all. Elena's hands were shaking again. I don't even know you. My name is Giovanni Rosie. I own 4 legitimate businesses in this city and have a vested interest in keeping certain people safe. You're now one of those people. Why? Her voice cracked slightly. Why would you care? Giovanni leaned back, his expression unreadable. Because I can. And because men like him only stop when someone makes them. Before Elena could respond, a shadow fell across the table. Giovanni didn't need to look up to know who it was. He could feel the anger radiating off the man like heat. Elena. Brandon Mitchell's voice was tight, controlled. The kind of control that came from clenching your jaw so hard your teeth ached. We need to talk. Elena went rigid. Giovanni felt her entire body lock up, every muscle preparing for flight or freeze. But she didn't move. She stayed exactly where she was, sitting beside him. Giovanni looked up slowly, his expression completely neutral. "The lady's occupied." Brandon's eyes narrowed. "This is a private conversation." "Not anymore." Giovanni's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "She's with me. You should leave." Something ugly flickered across Brandon's face. "You don't know what you're getting into." "I know exactly what I'm getting into." Giovanni's gaze was steady, unflinching. "And I know what you are. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out of this club, you're going to go home, and you're going to forget Elena's name." Brandon laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound. "Or what?" Giovanni didn't smile, didn't blink. "Or I make sure everyone in your world knows exactly what kind of man you are. Your firm, your colleagues, your family, every person who thinks you're respectable. I have resources you can't imagine and patience you haven't earned the right to test." The threat hung in the air between them, quiet and absolute. Brandon's face went red, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. For a moment, Giovanni thought he might actually swing. Part of him almost hoped for it. It would make everything simpler. But Brandon was smarter than that. Cowards usually were. "This isn't over," Brandon hissed. "Yes," Giovanni said calmly. "It is." Brandon stared at Elena one more time, a look full of rage and ownership and something darker, then turned and walked away. The entire room watched him go, conversations resuming only after the front door slammed shut. Elena released a breath she'd been holding. Her whole body trembled. He's going to do exactly what I tell him to do," Giovanni interrupted. "Which is nothing." "You don't understand. He doesn't give up. He'll—" Giovanni turned to face her fully. "Elena, look at me." She did. Her gray eyes were wet, terrified. "I don't make empty threats," Giovanni said quietly. "When I say you're under my protection, I mean it. Brandon Mitchell will not touch you again. Do you believe me?" Elena stared at him for a long moment, searching his face for the lie, the crack, the moment where he'd revealed this was all some game. But all she saw was certainty, cold, absolute certainty. "I don't know," she whispered. "Then let me prove it." Giovanni stood, offering his hand again. "Come on. I'm taking you somewhere safe." "Where?" "Somewhere he can't reach you." Elena looked at his hand, then at the door Brandon had just exited through, then back at Giovanni. She took his hand. No. The car was a black Mercedes, sleek and understated, the kind of vehicle that didn't scream wealth but whispered it. Giovanni's driver, a silent, efficient man named Marco, held the door open as Giovanni guided Elena inside. The interior smelled like leather and rain. They didn't speak during the drive. Elena stared out the window, watching the city blur past in streaks of neon and shadow. Giovanni made 3 phone calls in Italian, his voice low and clipped, efficient. Elena didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. Orders, confirmations, arrangements. When they finally stopped, it was in front of a building she recognized. The Aurora, one of the most exclusive residential towers in downtown Chicago. Doormen in crisp uniforms, marble lobby. The kind of place where a month's rent costs more than most people made in a year. "This is where you live?" Elena asked as Marco opened her door. "One of the places." Giovanni led her through the lobby. The staff nodded respectfully but didn't speak, and into a private elevator that required a key card to operate. The ride-up was smooth, silent. They stopped on the 42nd floor. The apartment was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture in dark wood and soft grays, art on the walls that even Elena recognized as expensive. But it wasn't ostentatious, it was controlled, precise, like everything about Giovanni. "Guest room is down that hall," Giovanni said, gesturing. "Bathroom's stocked. There are clothes in the closet. They might not fit perfectly, but they'll work until we can get you something proper." Elena turned to face him. "Why are you doing this?" "I told you." "No." She shook her head. "Men don't just help. They want something. What do you want?" Giovanni studied her for a moment.
Then he crossed to the windows, looking out at the rain-soaked city below.
When I was 16, my mother tried to leave my father. He was difficult, controlling, violent when he drank, which was often. She planned it for months, saved money, found a place, packed bags in secret. He paused, his reflection ghostly in the glass. The night she tried to leave, he found out. He broke her arm in 2 places, cracked 3 ribs, told her if she ever tried again, he'd kill her. Giovanni's voice was flat, emotionless. She never tried again. And I swore that if I ever had the power to stop men like him, I would. Elena felt something crack open in her chest. What happened to her? She died when I was 23, heart attack, officially. But I think she just gave up. He turned back to face her. So that's why I'm helping you, Elena. Not because I want something from you, because I couldn't help her. Silence settled between them, heavy with shared understanding. Elena's phone buzzed in her purse. She pulled it out, her hand shaking as she read the screen. Her face went pale. What is it? Giovanni asked. She showed him the message. You think he can protect you? You're mine, Elena. Always have been. Always will be. Sweet dreams. Attached was a photo, taken tonight, at the Meridian. Elena and Giovanni on the dance floor. Giovanni's expression didn't change, but something cold and dangerous flickered in his eyes. He pulled out his own phone, typed rapidly. Within seconds, he had a reply. Luca's on it, he said calmly. He'll trace the number, pull phone records, and have a security detail outside by morning. You can do that? I can do a lot of things. He pocketed his phone. Get some rest. We'll talk in the morning. Elena nodded, but didn't move. Giovanni? Yes? Thank you. He didn't smile, but something in his eyes softened, just slightly. Lock your door. If you need anything, my room is at the end of the hall. She watched him disappear into the shadows of the apartment, this stranger who'd become her shield in the span of a single song. Then she walked to the guest room, locked the door behind her, and finally, let herself cry. Mom. Giovanni stood in his study, staring at the city lights beyond the window. His phone buzzed. Luca. Number's a burner. But I pulled the location data. He was outside the Meridian when he sent it. Want me to send someone? Giovanni typed back, Not yet, but I want eyes on Brandon Mitchell, 24/7. Every move, every contact, every breath, and pull his financials. I want to know what he's into. On it. Giovanni set the phone down and poured himself a drink. Whiskey. Neat. He took a slow sip, feeling the burn, the clarity. Brandon Mitchell had made a mistake tonight. He'd threatened someone under Giovanni's protection, and Giovanni didn't forgive mistakes. But he also didn't rush. He planned. He prepared. And when he moved with precision. By the time Brandon realized what was happening, it would already be too late. Giovanni finished his drink, set the glass down, and walked to the window. Somewhere out there, in this city of 8 million people, a man thought he owned a woman he'd terrorized for 2 years. That man was about to learn a very expensive lesson about ownership, and Giovanni Rossi was going to be the one to teach it. The rain continued to fall, washing the city clean. Morning came too early and too bright. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar luxury surrounding her. For a few precious seconds, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back. The club, the dance, Brandon's face twisted with rage, Giovanni's quiet certainty as he'd promised protection she wasn't sure she believed in. She sat up slowly, her body aching with the kind of exhaustion that came from crying yourself to sleep. The guest room was immaculate, decorated in soft grays and cream, with furniture that probably cost more than her entire apartment. The clothes Giovanni had mentioned hung in the closet, expensive labels, neutral colors, sizes that would be close enough. Her phone sat on the nightstand where she'd left it, screen dark. She was almost afraid to check it. She picked it up. 3 new messages, all from unknown numbers. Her stomach twisted. You looked beautiful in green. He can't watch you forever. Tick-tock, Elena. Her hand started shaking again. She set the phone down like it had burned her, backing away from it as if distance could make the words untrue. Brandon wasn't stopping. He was escalating. and she dragged a stranger into the middle of it. A dangerous stranger, yes, but still someone who owed her nothing, who would eventually realize she wasn't worth the trouble. A knock at the door made her jump. "Elena?" Giovanni's voice, calm and controlled even through the wood. "Are you awake?" She grabbed a robe from the bathroom, silk, ridiculously expensive, and opened the door. Giovanni stood in the hallway, already dressed in a charcoal suit, his dark hair still damp from a shower. He held a coffee cup, steam rising from it in lazy spirals. "Thought you might need this," he said, offering it to her. Elena took it automatically, the warmth seeping into her cold fingers. "Thank you." "How did you sleep?" "I didn't, really." She hesitated, then showed him her phone. "He sent more." Giovanni's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. He took the phone, read the messages, his jaw tightening incrementally with each one. Then he made a call. "Luca." 3 more messages came through overnight. He rattled off the numbers. "Trace them, and I want the security footage from every camera within a block of this building for the last 12 hours. He paused, listening. "Good. Send me the financials when you have them." He ended the call and handed Elena back her phone. "Get dressed. We need to talk, and I'd rather do it over breakfast." 20 minutes later, Elena emerged in borrowed clothes, black slacks that were slightly too long, a cream silk blouse that fit surprisingly well. Giovanni was waiting in the kitchen, which was all marble countertops and stainless steel, with a spread of food that looked catered, fresh pastries, fruit, eggs, bacon. "I don't usually eat breakfast," Elena said quietly. "You do now. Sit." It wasn't quite an order, but it wasn't a suggestion either. Elena sat. Giovanni poured her orange juice, plated food she didn't remember asking for, and set it in front of her with the kind of efficiency that suggested he was used to taking care of details. "Eat first," he said. "Then we'll talk about what happens next." Elena picked at the food, her appetite non-existent, but her survival instinct strong enough to make her try. Giovanni ate methodically, checking his phone between bites, responding to messages with quick, efficient taps. "You run an empire from your phone," Elena observed. "Several, actually." He set the device down. "But right now, my focus is making sure you're safe, so let's talk about Brandon Mitchell." Elena's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "What about him?" "Everything. I need to know what we're dealing with. How you met, how long you were together, what he's capable of." Giovanni's gaze was direct, unflinching. "And I need you to be completely honest, even if it's painful. Especially if it's painful." Elena set down her fork, her appetite officially gone. "We met at a charity event 3 years ago. He was charming, successful, said all the right things. I was working as a nurse at the time, long shifts, not much of a social life. He made me feel seen." "And when did it change?" 6 months in. Small things at first, checking my phone, asking where I'd been, who I'd talked to. I thought it was just, I don't know, interest, caring." She laughed bitterly. "I was so stupid." "You weren't stupid. You were trusting. There's a difference." Elena looked up at him, surprised by the gentleness in his voice. "He proposed after a year. I said yes. We moved in together, and that's when it got worse. He didn't want me working night shifts anymore. Didn't like my friends. Started controlling the money, the car, everything. And when I pushed back," she stopped, her throat closing. "He hurt you," Giovanni finished quietly. Elena nodded. "The first time he apologized, cried, said he'd never do it again, bought me flowers, took me to dinner. I believed him." She wiped at her eyes angrily. "The second time he said it was my fault, that I pushed him, that if I just listened, it wouldn't happen. And I started believing that too." Giovanni's hands clenched into fists on the table, but his voice remained calm. "How many times, Elena?" "I lost count." The admission felt like glass in her throat. It became normal. The yelling, the hitting, the control. I forgot what it felt like to make my own decisions. And then 3 weeks ago, She stopped, unable to continue. "What happened 3 weeks ago?" Elena took a shaky breath. "He came home drunk, angrier than usual. I'd talked to a male colleague at work, just a conversation about a patient, but someone had told Brandon about it. He put his hands around my throat and squeezed until I couldn't breathe. I thought he was going to kill me.
I really thought. She pressed her palms against her eyes. When he finally let go, he said next time he wouldn't stop. And I knew he meant it. Giovanni stood abruptly, walking to the window, his back rigid with controlled fury. When he spoke, his voice was deadly quiet. That's when you left. I waited until he passed out, grabbed what I could fit in one bag. Went to a hotel. Then found the apartment I'm in now, paid cash for 3 months up front. I thought if I just disappeared, he'd move on, find someone else to... She couldn't finish the sentence. Giovanni turned back to face her. Men like Brandon don't move on. They escalate. He sees you as property he's lost, and he'll do whatever it takes to reclaim it. That's what we're dealing with. I know. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. That's why I'm so scared. Fear is rational, but it doesn't have to control you. Giovanni returned to the table, sitting across from her. Here's what's going to happen. My people are already tracking his movements, his communications, his finances. If he so much as parks outside your building, I'll know about it. If he contacts you again, we'll have a record. And when we have enough evidence, we'll make sure he faces consequences. The police won't... I'm not talking about the police. Giovanni's eyes were hard. I'm talking about making sure he understands that touching you again will cost him everything he values. His job, his reputation, his freedom. I have connections in every corner of this city, Elena, and I will use every single one of them to protect you. Elena stared at him, torn between hope and disbelief. You don't even know me. Why would you go this far? Because I can, and because you deserve to be safe. He pulled out his phone as it buzzed. That's Luca. The financials just came through. He read silently, his expression growing darker with each line. Finally, he set the phone down. Brandon's in debt. Serious debt. Gambling, mostly. He owes money to people who don't accept late payments. What does that mean? It means he's desperate. And desperate men do stupid things. Giovanni stood. I need to make some calls. There's a secure phone in the study. Use that instead of your cell from now on. And don't leave the apartment without telling me first. I have to go to work. I have a shift tonight. Call in sick. I can't just... Elena. Giovanni's voice was firm but not harsh. You asked for my help. I'm giving it. But that means following my lead until this is handled. Can you do that? She wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could take care of herself, that she didn't need a protector, that she was stronger than this. But the truth was, she was terrified. And Giovanni was offering her something she hadn't had in years, safety. Okay, she whispered. Good. I'll be in my office. If you need anything, I'm right down the hall. He left her alone in the bright, beautiful kitchen, surrounded by luxury that felt like a cage. A gilded one, but still a cage. Elena pulled out the secure phone Giovanni had mentioned, found it already programmed with her work number, and made the call. Her supervisor, Michelle, answered on the second ring. Elena, are you okay? You never call in. I'm sick. I need a few days. You sound terrible. Is it the flu? There's something going around. Something like that. I'll let you know when I can come back. She ended the call before Michelle could ask more questions, then sat in the silence of Giovanni's apartment, wondering how her life had become this, dependent on a man she'd known for less than 12 hours, hiding from a man she'd loved for 2 years. Her phone buzzed. The secure one this time. A message from an unknown number. This is Luca. Boss wanted you to have my contact. You need anything? You call. I'm 10 minutes away. Always. Elena stared at the message, feeling something unfamiliar stir in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. Hope. Down the hall in his study, Giovanni was already 3 calls deep into a plan that would either save Elena Carter or destroy Brandon Mitchell. Preferably both. He spoke to Matteo first, his lawyer, the kind who knew how to navigate gray areas without crossing into black. I need a restraining order filed by end of business today, Elena Carter against Brandon Mitchell. I'll send you the documentation within the hour. On what grounds? Harassment? Stalking? History of domestic violence? I'll have witness statements, message logs, everything you need. Giovanni, if this goes to court, she'll have to testify. You ready for that? She won't have to testify,
Because Brandon's going to agree to stay away without a fight.
You sound awfully confident about that. I am. Just file the paperwork. Next, he called Victor Castellano, a necessary evil, a rival who dealt in information the way Giovanni dealt in influence. They hated each other with the kind of professional courtesy that kept the city from burning down. Victor, I need a favor. Victor's laugh was dry, humorless. You calling me for favors? That's a first. What's the cost? I'll owe you one. Within reason. Define reason.
Not if it hurts my interests or involves violence. Victor was quiet for a moment. Must be serious if you're calling in debts you don't owe yet. Who's the target? Brandon Mitchell, mid-level finance, works at Whitmore and Associates. I need everything. Dirt, secrets, leverage. Preferably by tonight. That's a tight turnaround. You have a team. Use them. What do you do to earn your attention? Giovanni's voice went cold. He put his hands on someone under my protection. That's all you need to know. Ah. Victor's tone shifted, understanding clicking into place. One of those. I'll have something for you by 8. But Giovanni, you owe me, and I collect. I know. The third call went to someone Giovanni rarely contacted directly. Detective Sarah Chen, one of the few honest cops left in a department riddled with compromised loyalties. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice wary. Rosie, this better be good. I'm in the middle of something. I need information on a domestic violence case. Victim's name is Elena Carter. Perpetrator is Brandon Mitchell. She tried to file a report 3 weeks ago. It went nowhere. And you're calling me because? Because I want to know who buried it. Sarah was quiet for a beat too long. That's internal affairs territory. I can't just... Sarah, a woman's life is at risk. I'm not asking you to compromise yourself. I'm asking you to look into why the system failed her. Off the record. He heard her sigh. I'll see what I can find. No promises. That's all I'm asking. Giovanni ended the call and leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. 3 moves made. Dozens more to plan. Brandon Mitchell probably thought he was safe, thought his connections and his money would protect him the way they always had. He was wrong. The intercom on Giovanni's desk buzzed. Luca's voice crackled through. Boss, we've got a problem. Talk to me. Brandon just withdrew 15 grand in cash from 3 different ATMs, and his phone's been pinging near a known arms dealer in Pilsen. Giovanni's blood went cold. He's buying a gun. Looks like it. Where is he now? Heading north toward Lincoln Park, toward Elena's apartment. Giovanni was already moving, grabbing his jacket, his keys. Get eyes on him, now, and send Marco to meet me downstairs. We're going mobile. On it. Giovanni strode down the hallway, past the kitchen where Elena sat staring at her coffee, past the guest room where she'd cried herself to sleep. He stopped at the door, looked back. Elena. She looked up, startled by the urgency in his voice. Stay here. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone except me or Luca. Understand? Fear flashed across her face. What's happening? Brandon's making moves. I'm going to make sure they don't go anywhere. He pulled a small device from his pocket, a panic button, red and unassuming. If anything happens, you press this. Security will be here in 90 seconds. Giovanni, I'll be back soon, I promise. He didn't wait for her response. Couldn't. Because Brandon Mitchell had just escalated from desperate to dangerous, and Giovanni needed to be 3 steps ahead before this turned bloody. Marco was waiting with the car when Giovanni hit the lobby, engine running, passenger door already open. Giovanni slid in, phone to his ear as Marco pulled into traffic. Luca, status? He's parked 2 blocks from her building, just sitting there, watching. Anyone with him? Negative. He's alone. Keep eyes on him. I'm 5 minutes out. Giovanni ended the call and dialed another number. It rang once. Antonio, I need a crew at the corner of Clark and Diversey. Discreet. Make sure a certain individual understands he's being watched. How subtle we talking? Visible enough to send a message, gentle enough not to start a war. Consider it done. The city blurred past in streaks of gray and glass as Marco navigated traffic with the kind of aggressive precision that came from years of driving men who couldn't afford to be late.
Giovanni's mind raced through scenarios, contingencies, outcomes. Brandon was spiraling. The debt, the obsession, the weapons, it all pointed to a man who'd lost control and was trying to reclaim it through force. Men like that were predictable in their desperation and dangerous in their unpredictability. "Boss," Marco said quietly, "we've got company." Giovanni glanced in the side mirror, a black SUV, 3 cars back, matching their speed. "How long?" "Since we left the building." "Lose them." Marco didn't hesitate. He cut across 2 lanes, took a hard right down a side street, then another, weaving through the grid with practiced ease. The SUV tried to follow, but got caught at a red light, falling back. "Clear," Marco confirmed. "Good. Let's not make this easy for whoever's paying attention." They arrived at Lincoln Park 6 minutes later, parking a block away from Elena's building. Giovanni could see Brandon's car, a silver Audi, parked across the street, windows tinted, engine off. Waiting. Giovanni's phone buzzed. "Luca. Antonio's crew is in position. Brandon knows he's being watched. He's getting agitated." "Good. Let him sweat." Giovanni watched through the windshield as one of Antonio's men, a broad-shouldered enforcer named Carlo, walked past Brandon's car, slow and deliberate, making eye contact. Brandon's head turned, following the movement. Then another man appeared on the opposite side of the street. Then a third. Brandon's car started moving, pulling away from the curb in a jerky, panicked motion. He ran a stop sign, turned too fast, nearly clipped a parked car. "Running." Giovanni smiled. "Follow him, but keep distance." Marco pulled out smoothly, staying 3 cars back as Brandon wove through traffic, his driving erratic, desperate. He was heading south now, back toward the loop, checking his mirrors constantly. "He's scared," Marco observed. "He should be." They followed Brandon for 20 minutes as he drove in circles, clearly trying to figure out if he was being followed, who was following him, what it meant. Finally, he pulled into a parking garage downtown, disappearing into the concrete maze. "Hold here," Giovanni instructed. He got out of the car, straightened his jacket, and walked into the garage like he owned it. Because in a very real sense, he did. He'd brokered the deal that built this structure 5 years ago. He found Brandon's Audi on the 3rd level, empty. Brandon himself stood 20 feet away, phone pressed to his ear, his voice echoing off concrete walls. "Don't know who they are, but they're following me. I need protection. I need—" He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes landing on Giovanni. The phone slipped slightly in his grip. "I'll call you back." Giovanni walked forward slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. "Brandon Mitchell." "Who the hell are you?" "We met last night at the Meridian. You were bothering someone under my protection." Brandon's face twisted with recognition and rage. You're the one who— Elena's mine. You have no right." "I have every right." Giovanni's voice was calm, almost conversational. "See? When you put your hands around her throat 3 weeks ago, when you told her you'd kill her next time, you made a choice. And that choice has consequences. I don't know what lies she told you, but stop." Giovanni held up a hand. "I'm not here to debate what happened. I know exactly what you did. I have the medical records, the photos she took, the messages you've been sending. I have everything." Brandon's face went pale. "Those are private. Nothing's private when you threaten someone I'm protecting." Giovanni stepped closer. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave Chicago. Tonight. You're going to accept the job offer your firm has in their Denver office. Yes, I know about it. They offered it to you 4 months ago, and you turned it down. You're going to take it now. And you're never going to contact Elena Carter again." "You can't make me." "I can, and I will." Giovanni's eyes were flat, emotionless. "Because if you don't, I'm going to make sure every gambling debt you owe gets called in simultaneously. I'm going to make sure your firm knows you've been embezzling to cover those debts. Yes, I found that too. And I'm going to make very sure that the people you owe money to understand you're a liability who can't pay." Brandon's breathing quickened. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Giovanni pulled out his phone, showed Brandon a photo. Brandon outside a casino 2 nights ago, stacks of chips in front of him. Another photo, Brandon meeting with a known loan shark. A third, bank statements showing irregular transfers. "I don't bluff, Brandon. I plan. And right now, my plan involves you disappearing quietly or disappearing the hard way. Your choice. I'll go to the police. You'll what? Tell them a man gave you a job opportunity? That's what this is on paper. A chance to relocate, start fresh. But if you're stupid enough to fight me, I'll bury you so deep you'll never see daylight again. Brandon's hands were shaking now, his face slick with sweat. Why do you even care about her? She's nobody. Giovanni grabbed Brandon by the throat, not hard enough to hurt, but hard enough to make a point. She's not nobody. And if you ever say that again, we're done being civil. He released Brandon, who stumbled back, gasping. You have 24 hours, Giovanni said quietly. Pack your things. Take the Denver job. Disappear. Or I start making calls. Do you understand? Brandon nodded, unable to speak. Say it. I understand, Brandon choked out. Good. Giovanni turned to leave, then paused. And Brandon? If you ever come near her again, if you even think her name, I won't give you warnings. I'll just end you. He walked away, leaving Brandon trembling in the shadows of the parking garage, and didn't look back. By the time Giovanni returned to his apartment, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet. Elena was curled up on the couch in the living room, the secure phone clutched in her hand, her eyes wide when he walked in. Is it over? She asked, her voice small. Giovanni sat down across from her, suddenly exhausted. It's handled. He's leaving Chicago. He won't bother you again. How can you be sure? Because I gave him a choice between leaving quietly and losing everything. And he's just smart enough to know which one keeps him breathing. Elena stared at him, tears streaming down her face. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to. Just live your life. Be safe. That's enough. She crossed the space between them, and before Giovanni could react, she wrapped her arms around him in a fierce, desperate hug. He stiffened, unused to genuine affection, then slowly, carefully, put his arms around her. You saved me, Elena whispered against his shoulder. You saved yourself, Giovanni corrected gently. You left him. You asked for help. You fought back. I just made sure you didn't have to fight alone. They stayed like that for a long moment, two broken people finding something like peace in the gathering darkness. And for the first time in years, Elena Carter felt safe. But peace, Giovanni had learned long ago, was always temporary. 3 days passed in a careful rhythm that felt almost normal. Elena stayed in the guest room, venturing out during the day to walk the city with Luca shadowing her from a comfortable distance. She returned to work on the 4th day, her supervisor relieved to have her back, her coworkers asking gentle questions about her flu that she deflected with practiced smiles. Giovanni watched from a distance, monitoring the reports Luca sent every few hours, tracking Brandon's movements as the man packed up his life and prepared to leave for Denver. Everything was going according to plan. Until the invitation arrived. It came by courier on a Thursday afternoon, delivered in a cream envelope with Giovanni's name written in elegant calligraphy. He opened it in his study, already knowing what it would say before he read the words. The Chicago Arts Foundation cordially invites you to the annual Winter Gala. Saturday, December 10th. The Grand Ballroom at the Continental Hotel. Black tie. Your presence is requested. Giovanni set the invitation down, his jaw tightening. The Winter Gala was one of those events he couldn't avoid, a gathering of the city's elite, where deals were made over champagne and power was traded like currency. Politicians, business leaders, socialites, and the occasional criminal dressed in expensive suits, all pretending they were there for charity instead of networking. He'd planned to attend alone, as he always did, but things had changed. What is it? Elena's voice came from the doorway. She'd gotten comfortable enough over the past few days to wander into his study unannounced, a development Giovanni found he didn't mind as much as he should. An invitation, the Winter Gala. It's this Saturday. Elena stepped inside, picking up the heavy cardstock, her eyes scanning the elegant text. Sounds fancy. It is, and I need to be there. Then go. Giovanni studied her for a moment, weighing the decision forming in his mind. Come with me. Elena's head snapped up. What? Come with me to the gala. As my guest. Giovanni, I can't just... I don't have anything to wear to something like that. I don't belong in that world. You belong wherever you choose to be. He stood, crossing to where she stood near the window. And I'd rather have you where I can see you than wondering if you're safe. Brandon's leaving tomorrow. You said it yourself, he's not a threat anymore. I said he's leaving. I didn't say the threat was over. Giovanni's expression darkened. Men like Brandon have friends, connections. Until he's actually gone. Until I'm certain he's not stupid enough to make one last move, I want you close. Elena bit her lip, uncertainty flickering across her face. I've never been to anything like this. Then it's time you were. Besides, Giovanni's voice softened slightly. It might do you good, to dress up, to be somewhere beautiful, to remember what it feels like to not be afraid. Something shifted in Elena's eyes. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of something braver. Okay? But I'll need a dress. That's already handled. There's an appointment at Marcella's tomorrow at 2. Luca will take you. You planned this already? I planned for the possibility. Giovanni returned to his desk, pulling out a black credit card. Get whatever you need. Shoes, jewelry, whatever makes you feel like you can walk into that room and own it. Elena took the card slowly, like it might bite her. This is too much. It's necessary. Trust me. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. But Giovanni, thank you. For everything. He watched her leave, her footsteps fading down the hallway, and felt something uncomfortable settle in his chest. He was getting too invested, too close. This was supposed to be protection, not attachment, but somewhere between the dance floor at the Meridian and this moment, the lines had blurred. And Giovanni Rosi didn't do blurred lines. His phone buzzed. Victor Castellano. Giovanni answered with a sigh. Victor. Got something interesting for you about your boy Brandon. I'm listening. The debts are worse than we thought. He owes 300 grand to the Volkov crew. They've been patient, but patience runs out. Word is they gave him until end of month to pay up. Giovanni's mind raced. That's 10 days from now. Yeah, and here's the thing. Mitchell took out a life insurance policy 6 months ago. 2 million payout. Beneficiary is an offshore account he set up around the same time. Ice flooded Giovanni's veins. He's planning something. Either that or he's planning not to be around to collect. But my money's on something. Guy's desperate, Giovanni. And desperate men do stupid, violent things. Keep eyes on him. If he so much as looks at a weapon, I want to know. Already on it. But Giovanni, that favor you owe me, I'm thinking I might collect sooner than later. What do you want? There's a zoning vote coming up. Property development in the West Loop. I need 3 council votes to swing my way. Giovanni closed his eyes. I'll see what I can do. That's all I'm asking. Oh, and Giovanni, watch your back at that gala. A lot of sharks in those waters. The line went dead. Giovanni sat in silence, processing. Brandon wasn't just leaving. He was planning an exit strategy. The insurance policy, the offshore account, the weapons. It all pointed to someone who knew his time was running out and wanted to go out making a statement. And statements, in Brandon's world, meant violence. Giovanni made 3 calls in rapid succession. First to Luca, doubling security. Second to Antonio, arranging additional men for the gala. Third to Matteo, his lawyer, making sure every piece of evidence they had on Brandon was documented, filed, and ready to be used. When he finally looked up, it was dark outside, the city glittering like broken glass under a cold moon. The next day passed in a blur of preparation. Elena spent 3 hours at Marcella's, emerging with a dress she wouldn't let Giovanni see, insisting it was a surprise. Luca reported that Brandon had been to the bank twice, withdrawn more cash, and purchased a plane ticket to Denver scheduled for Sunday morning. One day after the gala. Giovanni didn't like coincidences. Saturday arrived cold and crystalline, the kind of winter day that made Chicago look like a postcard. Giovanni spent the morning in meetings, the afternoon reviewing security protocols for the evening, and the early evening getting dressed in his tuxedo. Perfectly tailored, black on black, the kind of formal wear that transformed men into something sharper, more dangerous. He was adjusting his cufflinks when Elena knocked on his door. Come in. She stepped into his room, and Giovanni's breath caught. The dress was midnight blue, almost black in certain light, with a fitted bodice and a skirt that flowed like water when she moved. It was elegant without being ostentatious, sophisticated without trying too hard. Her hair was swept up in a loose arrangement that left her neck exposed, delicate and vulnerable. Simple diamond earrings, borrowed from Marcella's collection, caught the light, but it was her eyes that stopped him. For the first time since he'd met her, Elena Carter looked like she wasn't afraid. "Will this work?" she asked, a hint of nervousness creeping into her voice. "You look beautiful," Giovanni said quietly, and meant it. Elena smiled, a real smile that transformed her entire face. "You clean up pretty well yourself." "I try." He offered his arm. "Ready?" "As I'll ever be." The ride to the Continental was smooth and silent, Marco navigating evening traffic with practiced ease. Elena sat beside Giovanni in the back seat, her hands folded in her lap, her breathing carefully controlled. "Nervous?" Giovanni asked. "Terrified," she admitted. "I'm not good at this. The small talk, the networking, the pretending." "Then don't pretend. Just be yourself." He covered her hand with his, a brief touch meant to reassure. "And stay close to me. I'll handle the rest." The Continental Hotel was a monument to old wealth, all marble columns and crystal chandeliers with a grand ballroom that could hold 500 people comfortably. Tonight, it held exactly that. Chicago's elite gathered in their finest, champagne flowing like water, a string quartet playing Vivaldi in the corner. Giovanni and Elena entered to a ripple of attention. Heads turned, conversations paused. Giovanni was known here, respected and feared in equal measure. But the woman on his arm was new, unknown, and that made her interesting. "Giovanni Rossi." The voice belonged to Margaret Whitmore, a steel magnolia in Chanel, chairwoman of the Arts Foundation and wife of the man who owned the firm where Brandon worked. "So glad you could make it. And who is this lovely creature?" "Elena Carter," Giovanni said smoothly. "Elena, this is Margaret Whitmore. She runs this circus." Margaret laughed, a practiced sound. "Circus indeed. Elena, are you new to Chicago?" "I've lived here for 4 years," Elena replied, her voice steady despite the tremor Giovanni could feel running through her. "I'm a nurse at Memorial." "How noble." Margaret's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "We need more people in service professions. So important." The dismissal was subtle but clear. Elena's hand tightened on Giovanni's arm. He steered her away smoothly, grabbing 2 glasses of champagne from a passing waiter. "Welcome to high society," Giovanni murmured, "where everyone's polite and nobody's kind." "She was awful." "She's typical. Don't let it get to you." He handed her the champagne. "Drink. It helps." Elena took a sip, her eyes scanning the crowd. "There are so many people here. And most of them are harmless. The ones who aren't, I know by name." He guided her toward a quieter corner, away from the main press of bodies. "We'll stay an hour, make the rounds, then leave. Easy." But easy, Giovanni should have known, was never the plan. The first sign of trouble came 20 minutes later, when Elena excused herself to use the restroom. Giovanni watched her go, tracked her movement through the crowd, saw her disappear down the hallway that led to the facilities. That's when Victor Castellano appeared at his elbow. "Rosie, we need to talk." "Not now, Victor." "Yes, now." Victor's voice was low, urgent. "Your boy Brandon? He's here." Giovanni's blood went cold. "What?" "Spotted him 10 minutes ago. He's not on the guest list, but he's here, hanging near the service entrance, watching the room." Giovanni's mind raced. "Where's Elena?" "Who's— Oh, the woman you came with?" Victor's eyes narrowed. "She's the one he's after." "Tell me where she went." "Restrooms, east hallway." Giovanni was already moving, cutting through the crowd with barely controlled urgency, his hand automatically going to his phone to text Luca. But before he could send the message, he heard it. A scream. Sharp, terrified, cut off abruptly. The ballroom went silent, conversations dying mid-sentence, heads turning toward the sound. Giovanni broke into a run, his expensive shoes hitting marble with sharp cracks, his heart pounding against his ribs. He found them in the hallway outside the restrooms. Brandon had Elena pressed against the wall, one hand around her throat, the other holding something that glinted in the low light. A knife. "Let her go." Giovanni's voice was deadly calm, the kind of calm that came before violence. Brandon's head whipped around, his eyes wild, unfocused. "Stay back. I'll do it. I swear I'll—" "You won't." Giovanni took a step forward. "Because if you hurt her, you don't walk out of this building alive." "I'm already dead." Brandon's voice cracked, spittle flying. "I'm dead, you understand? The Volkovs, the debts, everything. I'm already finished, but I'm not going alone."
If I can't have her, nobody can. Elena's eyes were wide with terror, her hands clawing uselessly at Brandon's grip. Giovanni saw the knife press harder against her side, saw the fabric of her dress tear slightly. "Brandon, listen to me." Giovanni's voice dropped lower, soothing, the tone he used when negotiations turned dangerous. "You don't want to do this. You're angry, you're scared, but this isn't the answer." "Don't tell me what I want," Brandon screamed. "You ruined everything. You took her. You made the Volkovs call in the debts early. You destroyed my life." "I protected someone you hurt. That's not the same thing." "She's mine." "She was never yours." Giovanni took another step. "She was a person you controlled. There's a difference, and you're smart enough to know it." Behind him, Giovanni heard movement, security, probably, or Luca arriving with backup. But he couldn't wait. The knife was too close, Brandon's grip too tight, Elena's face going pale from lack of oxygen. "Let her go," Giovanni said again. "And we can talk about getting you out of this. The Volkovs, the debts, I can help. But not if you hurt her." "You're lying." "I don't lie about deals, you know that." Giovanni held up his hands, showing he was unarmed. "Let her go, and I'll make this right. I'll pay off the Volkovs. I'll get you set up somewhere safe. But you need to let her go right now." Brandon's hand trembled. The knife wavered. For a moment, Giovanni thought he might actually do it. Then Brandon's eyes focused on something behind Giovanni, and his face twisted with rage. "You brought security? You're trying to trap me." "No, I'm trying to save both of you from something you can't take back." Brandon yanked Elena sideways, the knife pressing harder. Elena gasped, and Giovanni saw blood bloom on the blue fabric of her dress. Everything happened in 3 seconds. Giovanni moved. Fast, brutal, precise. He grabbed Brandon's wrist, twisting hard enough to make bones grind, forcing the knife away from Elena's body. Brandon howled, his grip on Elena loosening. She dropped, gasping, scrambling away. Brandon swung wild with his free hand, catching Giovanni across the jaw. Pain exploded, sharp and bright, but Giovanni didn't let go. He drove his knee into Brandon's stomach, once, twice, then slammed him against the wall hard enough to crack plaster. The knife clattered to the floor. Giovanni kicked it away, then pressed his forearm against Brandon's throat, pinning him. "It's over," Giovanni said, his voice shaking with barely controlled fury. "You're done." Brandon's face was purple, his eyes bulging. "Kill me then. Do it." "I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to make sure you face every consequence of what you've done." Giovanni increased the pressure slightly. "And you're going to spend every day of whatever's left of your miserable life knowing you lost." Security arrived then, 4 men in dark suits along with Luca, who immediately went to Elena. She was sitting against the wall, her hand pressed to her side where the knife had cut her, blood seeping between her fingers. Giovanni released Brandon, letting security take him, and dropped to his knees beside Elena. "Let me see." "It's not deep," Elena said, her voice trembling. "Just a cut." Giovanni gently moved her hand, examining the wound. She was right. It was superficial, painful, but not dangerous. Still, his hand shook as he pressed his handkerchief against it, applying pressure. "Luca, call an ambulance." "Already on it, boss." Giovanni looked into Elena's eyes, saw the shock settling in, the adrenaline crash beginning. "You're okay. You're safe now. I've got you." "He was here," Elena whispered. "He was waiting for me." "I know, but he's not going to touch you again, I promise." Behind them, Brandon was screaming threats and obscenities as security dragged him toward a side exit where police were already arriving, their sirens cutting through the night. The ballroom had erupted into chaos, guests spilling into the hallway, phones out, cameras flashing. Margaret Whitmore appeared, her face pale. "Giovanni, what on earth—" "Not now." His voice was ice. The ambulance arrived within minutes. Paramedics checked Elena's wound, confirmed it was minor, and bandaged it professionally. But she refused to go to the hospital, insisted she was fine, that she just wanted to leave. Giovanni didn't argue. He wrapped his tuxedo jacket around her shoulders, ignoring the blood on his shirt, and guided her through the service exit to where Marco waited with the car. They drove in silence, Elena trembling despite the warmth of the jacket, Giovanni's jaw tight with controlled rage. When they finally reached his apartment, he helped her inside, settled her on the couch, and poured her a generous measure of whiskey. "Drink." Elena obeyed, the alcohol burning down her throat, bringing color back to her face. "He knew I'd be there." "How did he know?" "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." Giovanni sat beside her, careful not to crowd her. "I'm sorry. I should have seen this coming. Should have. You saved my life." Elena's hand found his, gripping tight. "If you hadn't been there, he would have." Her voice broke. Giovanni pulled her close, and she collapsed against him, finally letting the fear and shock pour out in racking sobs. He held her, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring reassurances he wasn't sure he believed. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Finally, he checked it. "Luca. Police have Mitchell. He's talking. Says someone told him you'd be at the gala with Elena. Someone gave him floor plans, security schedules." "Boss." This was coordinated. Giovanni's blood turned to ice. Someone had set this up. Someone had wanted Elena hurt, or wanted to see how far Giovanni would go to protect her. Someone was playing a very dangerous game. He looked down at Elena, who'd finally cried herself into an exhausted sleep against his shoulder, her face peaceful despite the bandage on her side. He thought about the knife, about how close she'd come to dying in a hotel hallway while Chicago's elite drank champagne 30 feet away. Whoever had orchestrated this had made a fatal mistake. They'd threatened someone under Giovanni Rossi's protection, and now they were going to learn what happened when you made an enemy of a man with nothing left to lose. Giovanni carefully shifted Elena onto the couch, covering her with a blanket, then walked to his study. He made one call. "Luca, I want to know everyone Brandon talked to in the past week. Everyone he called, texted, met with. I want phone records, surveillance footage, financial transactions, everything." "On it. But boss, there's something else. The Volkovs didn't call in his debts early. Someone's been feeding you false information." Giovanni's grip tightened on the phone. "What?" "The Volkovs still think he's got 2 weeks to pay. Someone told you they'd moved up the timeline. Someone wanted you to believe Brandon was more desperate than he was." "Who?" "Working on it." "But Giovanni? Whoever this is, they're inside your circle, close enough to know your moves before you make them." Giovanni stood in the darkness of his study, looking out at the city that had always been his kingdom, and realized for the first time in years that he wasn't the only one playing the game. Someone else had been moving pieces, making plans, setting traps, and they'd just declared war. The night stretched into dawn, and Giovanni didn't sleep. He sat in his study with the lights off, the city sprawling below him like a map of possibilities and dangers, his mind working through every conversation, every deal, every move he'd made in the past 2 weeks. Someone close had betrayed him, someone who knew his schedules, his security protocols, his connections. Someone who understood how he thought well enough to manipulate his responses. The list of people with that kind of access was disturbingly short. His phone lit up at 5 in the morning. "Luca." "Talk to me," Giovanni answered without preamble. Brandon's phone records just came through. He got 3 calls in the past week from a burner, but we traced the location data. Calls originated from the financial district, specifically from inside the Castellano building. Giovanni's jaw tightened. "Victor?" "That's what I thought too. But boss, there's a problem. The calls happened during times when Victor was in meetings with witnesses. He's got alibis for all 3. Then someone in his organization. Maybe. Or someone who wanted us to think it was Victor." Luca paused. "There's more. Elena's apartment was searched 2 days ago. Professional job, nothing taken, but someone went through her things, looking for something." "Looking for what?" "That's the question. I went through her place myself after we found out. Only thing that seemed touched was her laptop. Whoever it was tried to access it, but couldn't crack the password." Giovanni stood, pacing to the window.
What's on her laptop that someone would want? I asked her about it earlier when she was coherent. She said it's just personal stuff. Photos, some work documents, nothing sensitive. Then why search for it? Maybe they think she has something. Maybe Brandon told them she did. Or maybe, Luca's voice dropped, maybe this isn't about what she has. Maybe it's about what they want you to think she has. The implications clicked into place like tumblers in a lock. They're trying to make me doubt her. That'd be my guess. Create paranoia, make you question whether she's actually a victim or if she's playing you. Classic manipulation. Giovanni's hand clenched around the phone. Who benefits from me doubting Elena? Anyone who wants you distracted.
Anyone who wants to see if your judgment's compromised. Anyone testing whether you'll choose protection over profit.
Luca was quiet for a moment. Boss, you've built your reputation on being cold, calculated, untouchable. The second people think you're making decisions based on emotion instead of strategy, they'll start testing boundaries. Then we don't give them the chance. Giovanni's voice was steel. I want a team on Elena around the clock. I want her laptop analyzed by our best people.
And I want every person who's had access to my schedule in the past month investigated. Everyone, Luca. Even people we trust. Even me. Especially you. If you're clean, the audit proves it. If you're not, I'd rather know now. Understood. What about Elena? You going to tell her someone's using her as bait?
Giovanni glanced toward the living room where Elena still slept, exhausted and wounded. Not yet. Not until I know what we're dealing with. Your call. But Giovanni? Be careful. Whoever this is, they're smart enough to stay 3 moves ahead. That means they've already planned for whatever you do next. The call ended. Giovanni stood in the gray pre-dawn light, watching the city wake up, and made a decision that would either save everything or burn it all down. He was going to find the traitor, and he was going to make them wish they'd never heard Elena Carter's name. Elena woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of low voices. Her side ached where the knife had cut her, and for a disorienting moment she couldn't remember where she was. Then memory flooded back. The gala, Brandon's hands around her throat, the knife, Giovanni's controlled fury as he'd torn her attacker away. She sat up carefully, finding herself still on the couch, covered with a cashmere throw. Morning light streamed through the windows, turning everything gold and soft.
In the kitchen, she could hear Giovanni speaking in rapid Italian, his tone clipped and commanding. Elena stood slowly, her muscles protesting, and made her way toward the voices. Giovanni was at the breakfast bar with 3 other men she didn't recognize. They all stopped talking the moment she appeared. Elena. Giovanni crossed to her immediately. You should be resting. I slept enough. Her voice was rough from screaming. Who are these people? Security consultants.
We're implementing some new protocols. He guided her to a chair, poured her coffee without asking. How's your side? Sore. But okay. She accepted the coffee, grateful for the warmth. Giovanni, what's happening? You look like you haven't slept. I haven't. We have a situation that requires immediate attention. He nodded to the 3 men. Give us the room. They left without a word, efficient and silent. When the door closed behind them, Giovanni sat across from Elena, his dark eyes searching her face. Someone set up the attack last night, he said quietly. Brandon didn't find you by accident. He was given information, where you'd be, when, how to get inside. Someone wanted you hurt. Elena's coffee cup trembled in her hands. Why? That's what I'm trying to figure out, but I need you to think carefully. Is there anything at all that someone might want from you? Information, documents, access to something? I'm a nurse. I don't have access to anything valuable. What about patients? Anyone high profile? Anyone who might have enemies? Elena thought back through the blur of faces and cases. We get everyone at Memorial, politicians, business people, criminals, but patient information is locked down. I couldn't access it even if I wanted to. What about your laptop? Luca said someone searched your apartment, tried to get into it. Her eyes widened. Someone was in my apartment? 2 days ago. They didn't take anything, just went through your things. What's on the laptop, Elena? Nothing, just photos, some old nursing school papers, Netflix. She set down the coffee before she spilled it. Giovanni, I don't understand any of this. Why would anyone care about me? Because you're connected to me now.
And that makes you valuable. He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. I need you to trust me. Whatever's happening, I'm going to figure it out. But until I do, you stay close. You don't go anywhere without security. You don't talk to anyone I haven't cleared. Understood? Elena wanted to argue, to insist she could take care of herself, but the memory of Brandon's knife against her ribs was too fresh. Okay. Good. Luca's going to take you to a safe house today, somewhere nobody knows about. You'll stay there until this is resolved. What about you? I'm going to find out who's trying to hurt you, and I'm going to make sure they regret it. The determination in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel something she hadn't felt in years. Protected. Not controlled, not owned, but genuinely protected by someone who asked nothing in return. Giovanni, she said softly, why are you doing all this? And don't tell me it's because you can. There's more to it than that. He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing absent patterns on the back of her hand. Because when I look at you, I see every person I couldn't save. Every time I was too late, too slow, too compromised by my own interests. And maybe if I can save you, it makes up for some of that. Maybe. You're not responsible for saving everyone. No, but I'm responsible for you. I made that choice the moment I took your hand on that dance floor. His eyes met hers, dark and intense. And I don't break my promises, Elena. Not to you. Before she could respond, his phone rang. He answered it, listened for 10 seconds, and his expression went from calm to lethal. When? A pause. How many? Another pause. Lock it down. I'm on my way. He stood abruptly. Change of plans. The safe house will have to wait. Someone just tried to kill Victor Castellano. Elena's heart skipped. What? Sniper. Took a shot at him outside his office 20 minutes ago. Missed by inches. Giovanni was already moving, grabbing his jacket, his gun. This isn't random. Someone's making moves against everyone in my circle, and that means the real target might not be you or Victor. Then who? Giovanni looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something like fear in his eyes. Me. The drive to Castellano's building was tense and fast. Marco took corners like he was racing, while Giovanni made call after call, his voice tightly controlled as he gathered information. Elena sat in the back seat, still wearing yesterday's blood-stained dress under Giovanni's coat, trying to process the fact that someone wasn't just targeting her anymore. They were targeting everyone Giovanni cared about, which, she was beginning to realize, included her. They arrived to find the street blocked off by police, ambulances parked at angles, officers directing traffic away. Giovanni flashed credentials Elena didn't know he had, and they were waved through to the underground garage where Victor Castellano held court in times of crisis. Victor stood near his armored SUV, a bandage on his neck where the bullet had grazed him, his expression murderous. When he saw Giovanni, something complicated flickered across his face. Rosie. Came to gloat? Came to compare notes. Someone's playing us both. Victor's laugh was harsh. You think? First your girl gets attacked, now I get a bullet meant for my brain. Someone's cleaning house. Or testing defenses. Giovanni moved closer, lowering his voice so the cops nearby couldn't hear. The shot that missed you. It was too clean to be an accident. Whoever pulled that trigger is a professional. They don't miss unless they mean to. You're saying someone wanted me scared, not dead. I'm saying someone wanted to see how you'd react, whether you'd run, fight, or come to me. Giovanni's eyes narrowed. Which is exactly what you did. Victor's face darkened. You think I'm the leak? I think someone wants me to think that, just like they wanted me to think you were the one feeding information to Brandon. Giovanni pulled out his phone, showed Victor the call logs Luca had sent. These calls came from your building, but you were in meetings. So either you have someone on your payroll working against you, or someone's framing you to destabilize our alliance. Victor studied the logs, his jaw working. I run a tight ship, Rosie. Nobody gets access without my say-so. Then either your ship's not as tight as you think, or you've got a blind spot big enough to drive a truck through. Before Victor could respond, Luca appeared from the stairwell, his face grim. Boss, we've got a problem. The sniper left something behind. He handed Giovanni a phone. Cheap, disposable. On the screen was a photo. Elena, sleeping on Giovanni's couch, taken from inside the apartment. Elena's blood turned to ice. That's from this morning. Someone was inside, Luca confirmed, while we were running security sweeps, while we had men on every entrance. Someone got in, took this photo, and got out without being seen. Giovanni's hands were shaking now, barely perceptible, but there. How? Working on it. But boss, there's a message with the photo. He swiped to show the text beneath the image. How much is she worth to you? Let's find out. The phone rang in Giovanni's hand. Unknown number. He answered on speaker. Mr. Rosie. The voice was electronically distorted, unrecognizable. I hope you're enjoying the game so far. Who is this? Someone who's been watching you build your little empire for years. Someone who knows every deal you've made, every corner you've cut, every person you've sacrificed for power. And someone who's going to take it all away. If you want something from me, name your price. I don't want your money, Giovanni. I want to watch you choose between your empire and her, between your reputation and her life, between everything you've built and the one person who makes you weak. Elena felt like she couldn't breathe. The voice continued, relentless. Here's how this works. In 72 hours, there's going to be an auction, a very specific auction, for a very specific property. You're going to attend, you're going to bid, and you're going to lose. And if I don't, then Elena Carter dies. Not quickly, not cleanly. I'll make sure you find pieces of her scattered across the city you think you control. Do we understand each other? Giovanni's voice was deadly calm. Perfectly. Good. Oh, and Giovanni, don't try to find me. Don't try to trace this call. I'm already 3 moves ahead. I've been ahead since the moment you took her hand on that dance floor. You just didn't know you were already playing my game. The line went dead. Silence fell over the garage, broken only by the distant sound of sirens. Elena stood frozen, the reality of the threat sinking in like ice water. Someone had been watching them from the beginning. Someone had orchestrated everything. Brandon's attack, Victor's shooting, the break-in, all of it designed to bring them to this moment. What auction? Victor asked quietly. Giovanni's face was stone. The West Side development. The property vote I needed your help securing. He looked at Victor. Someone knows I need that land, knows I've spent 2 years positioning myself to acquire it, and now they're going to force me to choose between the biggest deal of my career and Elena's life. So you walk away from the deal. Easy choice. It's not about the deal. Giovanni's voice was tight. It's about proving I can be controlled. The second I back down from this, every enemy I have will know I have a weakness. They'll come for Elena again and again, using her as leverage every time they want something from me. She'll never be safe. Elena found her voice. Then let me go. Both men turned to stare at her. What? Giovanni's voice was sharp. Let me go. I'll disappear. Leave Chicago. They can't use me against you if I'm not here. No. Giovanni, this is insane. You can't give up everything you've built for someone you barely know. I said no. He crossed to her, his hands gripping her shoulders. You're not running. You're not disappearing. You're not giving them what they want. But if I stay, they'll kill me. They'll try. And they'll fail. Because I'm going to find whoever this is, and I'm going to end them before they get the chance. His eyes searched hers, fierce and desperate. Trust me, Elena. One more time. Just trust me. She wanted to. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to protect herself, to not let another person control her fate. But when she looked into Giovanni's eyes, she didn't see control. She saw something rawer, more honest. She saw someone as terrified of losing her as she was of dying. Okay, she whispered. I trust you. Giovanni pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her like a shield. Over her shoulder, he met Victor's eyes. I need every resource you have, every contact, every piece of intelligence. Someone inside our circle is feeding information to whoever this is. We find them, we find our enemy. Consider it done. But Giovanni? Victor's expression was grim. You better be ready to burn everything down, because that's what it's going to take to win this. Then I'll burn it all, as long as she walks away alive. The next 72 hours were a blur of paranoia and preparation. Giovanni moved Elena to a location even Luca didn't know. A penthouse in a building he owned under a shell corporation, accessible only by private elevator with biometric security. He surrounded her with guards, installed enough surveillance equipment to monitor a small country, and personally checked every entrance, every window, every possible breach point. And still, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The auction was set for Friday night at the Harbor Club, an exclusive venue on the waterfront where Chicago's elite gathered to exchange money and influence like trading cards. Giovanni spent Wednesday and Thursday piecing together fragments of information, trying to identify the puppet master pulling the strings. Luca uncovered financial irregularities in 3 of Giovanni's businesses, subtle, professional embezzlement that had gone unnoticed for months. Someone with inside access, intimate knowledge of the accounting systems. Victor's people found evidence that the sniper had been hired through a dark web marketplace, paid in cryptocurrency that traced back to an account that had been active for exactly 6 days before going dark. Detective Sarah Chen called with worse news. The domestic violence report Elena filed. It wasn't buried by Brandon's friends. It was buried by someone in the district attorney's office. Someone who wanted Brandon free to escalate. Who? Giovanni demanded. That's where it gets complicated. The order came from high up. Someone with the kind of pull that makes evidence disappear and witnesses forget what they saw. Give me a name, Sarah. I can't. Not yet. But Giovanni, whoever this is, they have connections that go deeper than anything I've seen. They can reach into police files, court records, financial systems. This isn't some mid-level player. This is someone with real power. Thursday night, Giovanni sat in the penthouse with Elena, both of them exhausted, both of them running on fear and caffeine. She'd been quiet most of the day, processing the reality that her life had become a bargaining chip in a game she didn't understand. Tell me about the auction, she said finally. Why is this property so important? Giovanni leaned back, his tie loosened, his jacket discarded hours ago. The West Side development is 20 acres of prime real estate. Whoever controls it controls the future of that entire neighborhood. I've spent 2 years acquiring adjacent properties, securing zoning approvals, positioning myself to transform that area into something legitimate. Mixed-use development, affordable housing, community spaces, a legacy project. You're trying to go legitimate. I'm trying to build something that lasts longer than I do. He ran a hand through his hair. Everything I've done, every deal, every compromise, it's all been to accumulate enough power and money to go straight, to build something clean on top of the dirty foundation. That development is the cornerstone. And if you lose it, then I stay exactly what I am, a man who controls things through fear and leverage, a man who will die the same way he lived, violently, probably young, definitely alone. He looked at her. Or I was going to be that man, until you. Elena's breath caught. Giovanni, I know this is fast. I know it doesn't make sense. But somewhere between protecting you and fighting for you, something changed. You made me want to be the man I'm trying to become instead of the man I've always been. He moved closer, his hand finding hers. So no, I won't let you go. Not because I'm controlling you, but because losing you would mean losing the only good thing that's happened to me in years. Tears slipped down Elena's cheeks. I don't want you to lose everything because of me. Then help me win. Stand beside me tomorrow night. Show whoever this is that we're not afraid. That they can threaten and manipulate and play their games, but they can't break us. You're asking me to be bait. I'm asking you to be brave. One more time. Elena looked at their joined hands, then back up at his face. This man who'd become her shield, her protector, her unexpected salvation. Okay, but Giovanni, when this is over, when we've won or lost or burned everything down, I want you to take me dancing again. Somewhere quiet, where nobody's watching. Just us. Giovanni smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him in days. Deal. Friday arrived cold and clear. The auction was scheduled for 8 o'clock. At 6, Giovanni received a call from Matteo. We found something. One of your accountants, Richard Sterling, he's been siphoning information for months. Financial records, meeting schedules, security protocols, everything. Where is he? In the wind. Disappeared yesterday. Left his apartment cleaned out, his phone disconnected. But Giovanni, he left behind a laptop. And on it, we found communications with someone using the alias Architect. Giovanni's pulse quickened. What did they say? Mostly instructions, what information to gather, when to pass it along. But there's one message that's different. From 3 weeks ago. It says, the Carter woman is perfect. Make sure Rosie sees her at the Meridian. Everything depends on him taking the bait. The room tilted. Giovanni gripped the phone so hard it creaked. Say that again. Elena wasn't random, Giovanni. She was chosen. Placed at the Meridian the same night you had your meeting with Marcus Delacroix. Someone knew you'd be there, knew you'd notice her, knew you'd get involved. Giovanni looked across the room to where Elena stood by the window, watching the city lights, unaware of the conversation that was rewriting everything he thought he knew. Matteo, I need you to dig deeper. Find out everything about Elena Carter, where she came from, who she knew before Chicago, everything, and I need it in the next hour. Giovanni, what are you thinking? I'm thinking someone played me from the beginning, and I need to know if Elena was part of it or if she's another victim. He ended the call, his mind racing. If Elena had been placed in his path deliberately, if their meeting had been orchestrated, then everything that followed, the protection, the attachment, the choices he'd made, all of it had been manipulation. All of it had been designed to make him exactly what he'd become, compromised, emotional, weak. Elena turned from the window, sensing something. What's wrong? Giovanni stood slowly, his hand instinctively moving to the gun at his back. We need to talk. Elena's face went pale at the tone in Giovanni's voice. She'd learned to read him over these past weeks, learned the difference between his business calm and his dangerous calm. This was the latter. What do you mean, we need to talk? Her hand moved unconsciously to her side where the knife wound was still healing. Giovanni kept his distance, every muscle in his body coiled tight. Tell me about the night we met. Everything. And don't leave anything out. I already told you. Tell me again. His voice was harder now. Why were you at the Meridian that night? Elena's confusion was evident, but so was something else. Fear. I was meeting a friend, Sarah. She worked there as a bartender. Did she know Brandon would be there? No, nobody knew. I didn't even know until I walked in and saw him. Elena took a step toward him. Giovanni, what's happening? Why are you looking at me like that? Because I just found out our meeting wasn't coincidence. Someone made sure I'd be at that club the same night as you. Someone who knew exactly what would happen when I saw you in trouble. The words hung between them like an accusation. Elena's eyes widened with understanding, then hurt. You think I was part of it. You think I set you up. I think someone set us both up. What I don't know is whether you were aware of it. How can you even... Her voice cracked. After everything we've been through, everything you've seen, you think I'm working with whoever's trying to kill me? I think someone very smart could have recruited you without you knowing, or convinced you that helping them was the right thing to do, or... Giovanni's jaw tightened. Or I think you might have been exactly what you appeared to be, and someone used that to manipulate both of us. Elena's hands were shaking. I don't know what you want me to say. I was terrified that night. Brandon was there, I panicked, and you helped me. That's the truth. Is it? Because the woman who approached me didn't just ask for help. She knew exactly how to ask, exactly what to say to make me respond. And you walked straight to my table, Elena. In a crowded room, you came to me. Because you looked safe. The words burst out of her, desperate and raw. You were sitting alone, watching everything, and you looked like someone who could handle Brandon. I didn't know who you were. I didn't know anything except that I needed help, and you looked like you could give it. Giovanni wanted to believe her. Every instinct that had guided him through years of lies and manipulation screamed at him to see the truth in her eyes, to trust what he felt when he looked at her. But he'd built his survival on never trusting instinct over evidence. His phone buzzed. Matteo. I've got Elena Carter's background. Giovanni, she's clean. No criminal record, no suspicious associations, no unexplained income. She's exactly who she says she is, a nurse from Milwaukee who moved to Chicago 4 years ago for a job at Memorial. Her parents are retired teachers. Her college roommate is a social worker. The only red flag in her entire life is Brandon Mitchell, and even that checks out. Hospital records show 3 ER visits in 18 months with injuries consistent with domestic violence.
Giovanni closed his eyes. What about her friend Sarah, the bartender? That's where it gets interesting. Sarah Martinez quit the Meridian 2 days after your encounter with Elena, moved to Seattle, took a job at a tech company making 3 times her bartending salary.
The job offer came from a shell corporation that traces back to, you're not going to like this, the same network that paid the sniper who shot at Victor. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Sarah had been the plant. Sarah had convinced Elena to meet her at the Meridian that specific night. Sarah had probably told Brandon where Elena would be, knowing he'd follow, knowing Elena would panic, knowing she'd look for protection. And Giovanni had played his part perfectly. Matteo, I need Sarah Martinez found now. Already working on it. But Giovanni, the auction starts in 90 minutes. Whatever you're planning, you need to decide fast. Giovanni ended the call and looked at Elena, who stood frozen by the window, tears streaming down her face. I didn't know, she whispered. Sarah called me that night, said she had a rough shift and needed friendly company. I went because she was my friend. Or I thought she was. Her voice broke. I've been a pawn this whole time, haven't I? Giovanni crossed to her, his anger dissolving into something more complicated. We both have been. Someone knew exactly how I'd react to seeing you in danger. Knew I couldn't walk away. Knew that protecting you would make me vulnerable. So what do? We go to the auction. We face whoever this is, and we end it. He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. But I need to know, Elena, right now, before we walk into this. Are you with me? Completely, honestly with me? Yes. No hesitation, no doubt. Whatever happens tonight, I'm with you. Giovanni kissed her then, hard and desperate, pouring every ounce of frustrated fear and unexpected feeling into the contact. When he pulled back, they were both breathing hard. Then let's go finish this. The Harbor Club sat on the waterfront like a jewel, all glass and steel and old money. Giovanni and Elena arrived at 7:45, fashionably late enough to make an entrance, early enough to read the room. Luca and 4 other men formed a discreet perimeter, armed and alert. Inside, the auction hall was exactly what Giovanni expected. 200 of Chicago's most powerful people gathered under crystal chandeliers, champagne flowing, the air thick with ambition and barely concealed hostility. The property listing was displayed on screens around the room. 20 acres, prime location, estimated value $40 million. Giovanni felt every eye in the room track his entrance, and more specifically, track Elena on his arm. She wore a different dress tonight, deep red, elegant but not flashy. Her hair swept up to expose the graceful line of her neck. She looked like she belonged here, like she'd been born to stand beside men like him. There are a lot of people staring, Elena murmured. They're trying to figure out who you are, what you mean to me, how they can use you. Giovanni's hand tightened on hers. Let them wonder. Marcus Delacroix appeared first, his smile oily and false. Giovanni, didn't expect to see you here. Thought you might have, other priorities. My priorities are exactly where they need to be, Marcus. How's the zoning committee treating you? Marcus's smile faltered. Fine, just fine. He glanced at Elena, curiosity sharp in his eyes. And who is this lovely— None of your concern, Giovanni interrupted smoothly. Excuse us. They moved deeper into the room, Giovanni cataloging faces, identifying allies and enemies with the practiced ease of someone who'd spent years reading crowds. Victor Castellano stood near the bar, his neck still bandaged, his expression unreadable. Margaret Whitmore held court near the auction podium, her social graces hiding a mind that calculated profit margins faster than most people breathed. And in the corner, partially obscured by a column, stood a woman Giovanni had only seen in photographs. Sarah Martinez. She was watching Elena with an expression that might have been guilt or might have been satisfaction. From this distance, it was impossible to tell. Giovanni, Elena's voice was tight. That's Sarah, the bartender. I know, don't react. Don't let her see that you've noticed. But if she's here,
then whoever's running this wants us to know they have her. Wants us to understand how completely they've orchestrated everything. Giovanni's mind raced, piecing together the final parts of the puzzle. Stay close to me. This is about to get complicated. The auctioneer, a distinguished man in his 60s named Robert Chen, took the podium at precisely 8 o'clock. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this evening's extraordinary opportunity. The Westside Development property represents one of the most significant parcels to come to market in the past decade. Bidding will start at $30 million. A paddle went up immediately. $32 million. Another paddle. $35. The price climbed steadily as Chicago's elite competed for the privilege of transforming 20 acres into profit. Giovanni didn't raise his paddle. Not yet. At $40 million, the bidding slowed. Only 3 players remained: a real estate consortium, a developer from New York, and Margaret Whitmore representing the Arts Foundation's investment arm. $42 million, Margaret called out, her voice crisp. $45, the New York developer countered. The consortium dropped out. Now it was just 2. $50 million, Margaret said, and the room went quiet. The New York developer hesitated, calculated, then shook his head. I'm out. Robert Chen smiled. $50 million going once, going twice. $60 million. The voice came from the back of the room, electronically distorted through a speaker system. Every head turned. The screens around the room flickered, then changed. Instead of the property listing, they now showed a live feed. Elena's apartment, destroyed. Furniture overturned, belongings scattered, walls spray-painted with a single word, choose. Elena gasped. Giovanni's hand went to his gun, but Luca caught his eye and shook his head. Too many civilians, too much chaos. The distorted voice continued, echoing through the hall. Good evening, Chicago. Especially you, Mr. Rosie. I'm glad you could make it. I have a proposition for everyone here tonight. Security guards were moving now, trying to locate the source of the signal, but the voice kept talking. You're all wondering who I am, why I've disrupted this lovely evening. The answer is simple. I'm someone who's tired of watching men like Giovanni Rosie pretend to be legitimate while building empires on blood and manipulation. Someone who's going to prove that his empire is built on sand. The screens changed again. This time they showed financial records, Giovanni's businesses, his accounts, his deals. Every gray area, every questionable transaction, every compromise he'd made in the pursuit of power, laid bare for the entire room to see. These are the real books, the voice said. The ones Giovanni Rosie doesn't want you to see. The money laundering through his restaurants, the bribery payments to city officials, the connections to organized crime he spent years trying to bury. All of it. Everything. The room erupted in chaos. Gasps, accusations, phones coming out to photograph the screens. Giovanni stood perfectly still, his expression carved from stone, even as his world imploded around him. But I'm feeling generous tonight, the voice continued. I'll give Mr. Rosie a choice. He can have the West Side property, his precious legacy project, his chance at redemption. Or he can have Elena Carter, but not both. The woman who stands beside him now is wanted for questioning in connection with multiple fraudulent insurance claims. Her ex-boyfriend Brandon Mitchell has provided sworn testimony that she manipulated him, stole from him, and orchestrated her own assault to gain Mr. Rosie's protection and access to his resources. That's a lie. Elena's voice rang out, clear and strong. Is it? Then why is there a warrant being issued for your arrest right now? Why are police waiting outside to take you into custody the moment you leave this building? The voice paused for effect. Unless, of course, Mr. Rosie uses his considerable influence to make that warrant disappear. He can save you, Miss Carter, or he can complete this auction and claim his property. He can save his empire, or he can save you. But the moment he chooses one, he loses the other. Forever. Giovanni's mind worked furiously through the trap. If he used his connections to protect Elena, he'd be admitting to corruption in front of 200 witnesses, destroying any chance at legitimacy. If he walked away from Elena to save his reputation, he'd prove he was exactly the man he'd been trying not to be. And if he tried to fight both battles at once, he'd lose everything. It was perfectly designed, brilliantly cruel. You have 60 seconds to decide, Mr. Rosie. The auction will continue. You can bid, or you can leave with Miss Carter and try to save her. But you can't do both.
Choose. Giovanni looked at Elena. Her face was pale but composed, her gray eyes clear despite the fear he knew she felt. In that moment, she looked exactly like she had that first night, desperate but brave, terrified but standing tall. Giovanni, she whispered, take the property. Your legacy matters more than— No. The word was quiet but absolute. He turned to face the room, to face the cameras, to face whoever was pulling these strings. I choose her. The room went silent. I choose Elena Carter, and I don't care what evidence you fabricated, what warrants you invented, what testimony you bought from a desperate man. She's innocent, and I'll spend every resource I have proving it. Even if it destroys you? The voice asked. Even then. Giovanni took Elena's hand, raised it to his lips, and kissed it gently. Because some things are worth more than empires. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the screens flickered again. This time they showed something different. Security footage from a parking garage. Brandon Mitchell meeting with a woman. The timestamp showed it was from 3 weeks ago, before the attack at the gala. The woman turned toward the camera, and Giovanni's blood turned to ice. It was Margaret Whitmore. What? Margaret's voice rose above the confusion. That's not— I've never met that man. But the footage kept playing. Margaret handing Brandon an envelope. Brandon counting money. Their lips moving in conversation the microphones couldn't capture. Then another clip. Margaret meeting with Richard Sterling, Giovanni's accountant. Another clip. Margaret on the phone, her face tight with concentration. The distorted voice spoke again, but this time it sounded different, less filtered, more familiar. Margaret Whitmore has spent the past year orchestrating everything you've witnessed. The attacks on Miss Carter, the frame job on Mr. Rosie, the manipulation of Brandon Mitchell, all of it designed to acquire the West Side property at a fraction of its value while simultaneously destroying the one man who could compete with her development interests. The voice filter dropped completely, and Detective Sarah Chen stepped into view, holding a microphone. Mrs. Whitmore, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, attempted murder, and about 15 other charges I'm going to enjoy reading to you. The room exploded. Margaret tried to run, but officers materialized from the crowd. They'd been embedded the entire time, waiting for this moment. She screamed denials, threats, offers of money, but the evidence was already loaded on every screen, backed up in a dozen secure locations. Sarah Chen walked toward Giovanni and Elena, her expression apologetic. Sorry for the dramatics. We needed her to make a move, needed her to think she'd won before we could prove what she'd done. Giovanni's mind was still catching up. You've been working this the whole time. Since you called me about Elena's buried police report. When I started digging, I found Margaret's fingerprints all over it. She'd been planning this for months. Found Brandon through his gambling debts. Found Elena through her connection to him, then positioned them both like chess pieces. Sarah Martinez was supposed to get Elena to the Meridian, where Margaret knew you'd be. Everything after that was just watching you react exactly how she predicted. But the financial records, the evidence against me, fabricated. We let her think she had real documents, but everything she showed tonight was created by our forensic accounting team. The real books are clean. Well, Sarah smiled slightly, cleaner than she claimed. Elena found her voice. And the warrant for my arrest? Never existed. Just another lie to force Giovanni's hand. Sarah looked between them. She underestimated one thing, though. She thought Mr. Rosie would choose his empire over you. She was wrong. Giovanni pulled Elena close, his heart still hammering against his ribs. What happens now? Now we process Margaret Whitmore and dismantle her organization. Richard Sterling's already turned witness in exchange for immunity. Sarah Martinez is cooperating fully. She had no idea what she was actually part of until it was too late. And Brandon Mitchell? Sarah's expression hardened. He's looking at serious time for assault, conspiracy, and about a dozen other charges. And the West Side property? Robert Chen approached, looking shaken but professional. Given the extraordinary circumstances, the auction is invalidated. However, Mr. Rosie, your bid of $60 million stands as the highest legitimate offer. If you still want it, the property is yours. Giovanni looked at Elena, then back at the auctioneer. I want it, but not for what I originally planned. He turned to address the room, his voice carrying over the chaos. That property will become something this city actually needs. Mixed-income housing, community medical clinic, youth center. And it'll be managed by a foundation I'm establishing in Elena Carter's name, because she reminded me that power should be used to protect, not to control. The room erupted in applause. Some genuine, some simply relieved to be on the winning side. Giovanni didn't care which was which. He only cared about the woman in his arms, who was crying and laughing at the same time. "You chose me," Elena whispered. "You chose me over everything." "I chose us," Giovanni corrected. "Everything else is just details." 3 months later, spring came to Chicago like a promise. The West Side property had broken ground, its foundation already laid for the buildings that would transform the neighborhood. The foundation bearing Elena's name was operational, funding medical care and support services for domestic violence survivors across the city. Margaret Whitmore was awaiting trial. Her empire collapsed, her name synonymous with corruption instead of charity. And Giovanni Rosi was dancing. The club was small, intimate, nothing like the Meridian. No crystal chandeliers, no political elite, just a jazz trio playing for a crowd that came for the music instead of the networking. Giovanni held Elena close, moving with her to a melody that felt like it had been written just for them. "You're getting better at this," Elena teased. "I have an excellent teacher." You also have an excellent partner." She rested her head against his chest. "I can't believe how much has changed." "Everything changed the moment you asked me to dance." "No. Everything changed when you said yes." Elena looked up at him, her gray eyes warm. "You could have said no.
You could have ignored me. You could have—" Giovanni kissed her, soft and sweet, silencing her doubts. When he pulled back, he smiled. "I couldn't have said no if I'd wanted to. You walked into my life like you belonged there, like you'd always been meant to be there. That's terrifying and romantic in equal measure. That's us." He spun her gently, bringing her back into his arms. Terrifying and romantic, dangerous and safe. Everything we shouldn't be and everything we needed.
The song shifted into something slower, something that ached with possibility. Around them, other couples swayed, lost in their own worlds. But Giovanni only saw Elena, the woman who'd stumbled into his protection and somehow become his purpose. "I love you," he said quietly. Not a declaration, just a fact, simple and true. Elena's breath caught. "I love you too. Even though you're bossy and overprotective and you control entire city blocks from your phone." "Especially because I'm bossy and overprotective and I control entire city blocks from my phone." She laughed, the sound bright and free. "Fair point." They danced until the club closed, until the last notes faded and the lights came up. Giovanni walked Elena to his car, their car now. She'd officially moved into his apartment last week, where Marco waited with his usual patient discretion. "Home, sir?" Marco asked. Giovanni looked at Elena, who nodded. "Home." The word felt different now. Not a place, but a person. Not a building, but the space they created together. Home was wherever Elena was, whether that was a penthouse or a dance floor or a quiet moment between heartbeats. As they drove through Chicago's glittering streets, Elena's hand found Giovanni's. He threaded his fingers through hers, marveling at how something so simple could feel so profound. "What are you thinking about?" Elena asked. "That night at the Meridian. How terrified you were. How desperate. And how you helped a complete stranger." "No." Giovanni squeezed her hand. "How I helped the woman I was always supposed to find. I just didn't know it yet." Elena was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think we saved each other. You gave me safety, but I gave you something too. A reason to be the man you wanted to become instead of the man you thought you had to be." Giovanni pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. "You're right, as usual." "I know. You should get used to that." "Already am." They arrived at the building, rode the elevator up in comfortable silence, walked into the apartment that had transformed from his space into theirs. Elena kicked off her shoes, moved to the windows to look out at the city they'd both fought so hard to survive. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real," she said softly.
that we're real.
Giovanni came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder.
We're real. Everything else, the attacks, the manipulation, the danger, that's over. This is what's left. You and me, building something that lasts. Building something good. The best thing. He turned her to face him, his dark eyes serious. Marry me. Elena's eyes went wide. What? Marry me, Elena Carter. Not because I want to control you or own you or keep you locked in some tower, but because I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to fight with you and make up with you and dance with you until we're too old to stand. Marry me. Giovanni, I don't have a ring yet. I wanted to wait until the moment was right, until I could do this properly. But standing here with you, looking at the city where we fought for each other, where we chose each other, this is the moment. So yes, I'm asking without a ring, without planning, without any of the things I'm usually so careful about. Because with you, I don't need careful. I just need honest. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Yes. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. Yes to all of it. The fights and the making up and the dancing until we're old. Yes to building something good together. Yes to you, Giovanni Rossi, exactly as you are. Giovanni kissed her then, deep and claiming and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both of them were smiling. I should probably mention, Elena said, a little breathless, that I'm going to be insufferable about wedding planning. I expect nothing less. And I want to get married here, in Chicago, in the city that brought us together. Done. And I want Luca to be your best man because he's the only person who's been putting up with your nonsense longer than I have. Giovanni laughed, the sound genuine and warm. He'll be thrilled. They stood together at the window, watching the city lights flicker and glow. Two people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to build something bright. The past was behind them, the violence, the manipulation, the fear. The future stretched ahead, full of possibility and promise, and the kind of love that transformed everything it touched. Elena leaned into Giovanni's embrace, feeling safe in a way she'd never thought possible. No longer running, no longer afraid, no longer alone. Just present, just here, just held by someone who saw all of her broken pieces and loved her anyway. Dance with me, she said softly. Giovanni smiled. Always. There was no music, but they didn't need it. They swayed together in the quiet apartment, moving to a rhythm only they could hear, building their future one step at a time. And when Giovanni twirled Elena under his arm, bringing her back close, both of them laughing like they'd discovered something precious and rare, the city beyond the windows seemed to glow a little brighter. Because this was what power looked like when it chose protection over control. This was what strength looked like when it chose vulnerability over invulnerability. This was what love looked like when two broken people decided to be whole together. This was the ending that felt like a beginning. And when they finally stopped dancing, when they moved to the bedroom they now shared, when they fell asleep tangled together with promises whispered into the darkness, Chicago kept spinning around them. The city where a desperate woman had asked a dangerous man for one dance. The city where that man had said yes and changed both their lives forever. The city that had tried to destroy them and instead had forged them into something unbreakable. Home.